Have you ever wondered what the purpose of a remix album is? Or why do albums get deluxe versions? And what exactly is a concept album? Well, if you've asked yourself questions like these, then keep watching, because today we're going to talk about 5 of the most common types of albums in the music industry and how they differ from one another so that you can make the best decision for your next full-length project. Let's blast off and get started. JM in your universe. Konnichiwa friends, I'm Jonathan Miller and welcome back to Jonathan Miller Music, helping you become a better indie artist. I make electronic dance pop music and every Wednesday on this channel, I'm helping others take their music to level 2. If that sounds good, consider subscribing and ringing the notification bell. If not, then that would break my heart completely. I'd be devastated. Then again, I don't really know if I even have a heart. What? Think about that. All right, so let's talk about 5 of the most common types of albums in the music industry. And to be clear, I don't mean different types of albums like cassettes versus vinyls. I mean things like figuring out what the difference is between a remix album and a concept album, or what the purpose of an album repackage is. Also, this is kind of a sequel to the video I did last week about 5 of the most common types of singles in the music industry, which I highly recommend you check out because there's a lot of good information in there. There's a link in the description below so you can do so. But anyway, let's get started. Studio albums. All right, so if you've ever heard the term full-length studio album, you may have been a little curious as to what that actually is and how exactly that's different from any other type of album. Now, most albums by definition are studio albums as they're almost always made in a recording studio. However, a full-length studio album is a collection of newly recorded material that distinguishes itself from other types of albums like compilations or reissues of previously recorded material. They're usually planned, thought out, and can take anywhere from a few weeks to well over a year to complete. They may contain 1 or 2 cover songs and have guest features and collaborators, but not always. For example, Thank You Next by Ariana Grande is a studio album. Her live album, K-Bye For Now, is not considered a studio album as it consists of all live recordings. Remix albums. Okay, so now that we know what a studio album is, let's discuss something else that is not a studio album. Remix albums like Club Future Nostalgia from Dua Lipa are a type of album that mostly contain remixes of an artist's previously released material. Occasionally though, they will have 1 or 2 new songs, not always, although this isn't common. One of the very first remix albums was Harry Nilsson's Aerial Pandemonium Ballet in 1971. The first remix album to go #1 on the Billboard 200 albums chart was Jennifer Lopez's J to the L-O The Remixes in 2002. Now, remix albums can contain just as many tracks as a regular studio album, oftentimes more, and they're often created for supplementary reasons. They're a great way to get new material out to fans in the interim while you're working on a new album or going out on tour. Concept album. This is a question I get asked a lot. A concept album is a type of studio album in which the featured tracks tell a collectively bigger theme than they do individually, or that there's a very strong central theme or motif. Now, sometimes, depending on who you ask, with this definition, the term concept album can also encompass things like soundtracks, compilation albums, cast recordings from musicals, greatest hits albums, tribute albums, Christmas albums, and live albums. Because, I mean, when you think about it, all of those do have a central theme or motif. Examples of concept albums are In the Wee Small Hours by Frank Sinatra, Crybaby and K-12 by Melanie Martinez, The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, and one of my favorites, Back to Basics by Christina Aguilera. Deluxe versions. The last 2 types of albums that we're going to discuss today are very similar, but I broke them up into 2 separate categories because their purposes and executions are just slightly different. And in case anyone in my comment section, as they usually do every time I bring these up, wants to point out that they're just for making money, yeah, that's kind of the point. Who are you trying to impress? Imagine wanting to make money from a business. That's so weird. Anyway, deluxe versions of albums serve a variety of purposes beyond just making money. They can either be released at the same time as the standard version, or more often, they're released after a period of time has passed. Deluxe versions tend to include extra material, like new songs, demo versions, live recordings, B-sides from singles that weren't originally on the album's track list, remixes, DVD content, etc. Now, deluxe versions generally must contain 60% of the original audio found on the the standard version of an album, and the other 40% of audio can be any of the aforementioned material, except DVD content, obviously. Now, if your deluxe version meets this requirement, sales of both the deluxe version and the standard version will be combined into chart eligibility on things like Billboard or the UK charts. You know, if they're released at the same time. Another reason for their existence is one that often goes overlooked, and that's the fan and artist connection. Giving our fans extra goodies that enhances our album's experience is really fun. It's a way to let our fans get to know us even better as artists. It's like this special souvenir for them. I say that as a music fan myself, that lets them come a little deeper into our world. Yeah, the marketing aspect is part of it, but it's also just fun to share more of our artistic creations with the people who value it the most. Album repackages. All right, K-pop fans, let's talk album repackaging. Typically in Western markets, repackage albums would just be called a reissue or a deluxe version, and then everything I said in the previous section would be true, and boom, that would be the end of the video. But we know that K-pop is an entirely different market, and repackage albums are just a little bit different. For one thing, repackage albums can feature an entirely different concept from an artist or group. For example, Girls' Generation's O album was a little bit cutesy, it was a little bit softer in tone, whereas its repackage album, Run Devil Run, has a darker theme, more sultry, more badass, even though the albums are relatively the same, except Run Devil Run has a few more extra tracks and, of course, different packaging. Album repackages in K-pop tend to come with a lot more goodies for fans, like photo cards, unique styles of packaging, special DVDs, all sorts of fun stuff. They're really fun cultural collectibles and show off more sides to a group and their talents. They highlight different and unique styles or sounds and really show off artists or groups in different ways. Here in the West, reissues and repackages of albums or deluxe versions typically follow the same theme of the original album, but in K-pop, they're more like two sides of the same whole telling a much larger picture. It really kind of comes down to a cultural love of physical goods, which I totally understand growing up with people from Japan, but at the same time, I also understand why that confuses a lot of Western audiences. But I hope that I explained it well and it kind of makes sense. Regardless of what type of album you're making, albums are a form of artistic expression. They are the canvas in which we tell our stories. It all just depends on how you want to tell your truth and paint your artistic picture. So that is my video on 5 of the most common types of albums in the music industry. Question of the video, what is your favorite album of all time? Leave me a comment below letting me know and tell me why. If you want to check out my video on 5 of the most common types of singles in the music industry, or if you want some help budgeting an album, I've left some videos in the description so you can go check them out. And if you like me and you like what I do, consider joining me on Patreon like Abigail here and all these wonderful people to get all sorts of fun rewards, including access to my YouTube calendar to see what's coming to the channel. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new. I put out new videos every single Wednesday. Once again, I'm Jonathan Miller, and I will see you next time. See you later.
I am a machine, not a robot, not operation electronically. My messages are magnetic vibrations once upon